ahead, slow it down and making no time. I gotta keep it rolling. Those in the windshield wipers snapping out the tempo, playing funky rhythm with the song on the radio. I gotta keep it rolling.
Welcome, everybody, to the Rideshare Rodeo Audio Podcast. For those of you who have been catching some of the previews I have been doing on YouTube, I will be moving back to the audio platform for the audio podcast starting next week. Starting next week, we will do the audio podcast live on Podbean, and it will then drop as a podcast on Tuesday morning, as always. But we will record the live one on Monday. Still have guests. People will be able to come into the live through the Podbean app. So no matter what app you are listening on, if you would like to join us live, it's Rideshare Rodeo Podcast. It will be every Monday evening, and you can catch us on Podbean. So otherwise, you can Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, you can catch the podcast drop. To YouTubers and YouTube members and stuff, I will drop it into the members. This is going to be the last one that's publicly done. Otherwise, guys, you're going to have to catch us on the audio podcast every Tuesday or catch us live on Mondays. Hopefully all that made some sense. So today is July 1st, 2024. This is podcast episode 370. And the download count right now for the audio podcast is 249,800 and change. So at approximately 2,000 downloads a week, we will cross over into the 250,000 marker, probably on this podcast of downloads before next week. We should be crossed over the 250,000 download marker. And I know to a lot of people on a lot of other platforms, it doesn't seem, I mean, it's a big number, of course, but it doesn't seem like quite the big accomplishment that it is, because on YouTube, somebody can watch for a minute or 10 seconds or whatever it counts as a view. People can watch in their feed and you can get it count as a view. And I'm not demeaning any of that, because we can all go to our watch time and see what the average watch time is. However, when we're talking about podcast downloads, and it might not be always the case, but in many cases, people are listening to the entirety of it. So no matter what pod player you use, Apple, Spotify, whatever you're using, any of the 100 other brands where you can find Rideshare Rodeo podcasts, most settings are download new episodes and delete them after they have been played. Well, those downloads all go in, and they get deleted once they're played. Usually these are people who use their podcasts for many different podcasts and are driving a lot. And I know we have a ton of regular podcast listeners. And that's why I'm going to try and be doing the audio thing is going to be it's going to be back to its own separate thing again next week. So I want you guys participating. Even you YouTubers, I want you to come over to Podbean. It's a different environment. There's no video. However, we can have a great discussion, and anybody can call into the Podbean app while we're doing the live. We will get to a point, I will have a segment where any gig worker can call in, but we got a few stories today. Welcome everybody in YouTube world. Again, I am live streaming the audio podcast, and I'm not watching any of the comments, because when I do the audio podcast, it's for the audio listeners. However, this one I'm doing live to show you guys how I do it in a single take. And this week's kind of a little screwed up too. So getting through it's going to be, because the last weeks have been big weeks for news, real big weeks. And we got some changes coming before next week too. So that's why we are taking 2 weeks off the roundtable. Number one reason is this Thursday is 4th of July, Independence Day. Next Thursday, I am checking into some search and rescue stuff. But also, I'm trying to revamp a couple things, and one of those things will be the audio podcast. And audio podcast listeners, don't worry. The 369 episodes up till today that you're used to is the same way it will go down. I'm just going to have a little bit different of a format of how we roll through things. Stories, having guest drivers on, and only for a portion, not for the whole thing, just for like a 15-minute segment. We're going to try that. But let's go through the stories we do got for this week, because we'll roll through some of them. I guess, they're totally out of order here too, and I just put them in an order, and then I kind of moved them around, and I'm like, what am I doing? This should not be the main story, and I try and lead in with something smaller. But we're going to talk about DoorDash today. We're going to talk about, hopefully we get to all this. We're going to talk about DoorDash a little bit. We're going to talk about Massachusetts, $32.50 an hour for Uber Lyft drivers. We're going to talk about the Instacart app and how it says it's making things smoother. And I just used air quotes to the audio podcast listeners, how it's making things smoother for shoppers. I don't really see that these are big tools, but we'll discuss them. We will also be talking about Cedar Rapids. If you live in Cedar Rapids, Idaho, you're going to have a chance at something here, not on the podcast, but something's coming to you guys very soon that is going to be local competition for DoorDash. And we're going to get into that a little bit. And then hopefully we'll at least get through the Waymo Robo taxis in San Francisco too. And then I have a couple other little odd and end stories if we can get to them. But we'll see. Let's see how many of these we can get through. Again, it might be kind of a short episode today. I feel like the last couple weeks have really drained me. And if for any reason you've missed the last couple weeks, I've dropped some off Tuesday podcasts as well. So there's been a couple extra drops, like the one that I did with Karen Anderson a couple weeks back on Prop 22. There's just, if for any reason you've been missing the audio podcast lately, go take a look and see where since mid-June till right now, July 1st, all of them that I've dropped, and play a little catch up because there was a lot of good content in those. Also, before I fully jump in here, make sure to check out Kim's Side Money Plans audio podcast. Check out Gig Economy podcast audio podcast, and check out Be My Own Boss audio podcast. All of them can be found on Spotify, and then you can find them on whatever other platforms they might be hosted on. But all those three can be found on Spotify. So check those out. Okay, let's go to this first one. It's nothing big, but it's not a long story. It is interesting in that this story comes from the DoorDash page itself, DoorDash.com. I always love it when I can pick up a little tidbit of news that comes from the DoorDash website, because then I can take screenshots. I can mark the page and I put it into my show notes for today. So just by any chance, because it even says 7/1/24 on the DoorDash page. So it was put up there today. Now, sometimes I've also taken the screenshots and they've gone into a folder where I save for all of this podcast and any things that I've used, because sometimes they put this stuff out and it has a way of disappearing in a day or two. I don't know if maybe somebody catches it and says, hey, why'd you post that? This shouldn't be public. We don't need to be this transparent. And yeah, that's really weird, isn't it? That I just used DoorDash and the word transparent. But my point is they're not, it's not being fully transparent clearly here, but what they're doing, and obviously this didn't come from their own inception. This is something that must have in some way or another been forced on by California, because it is they are having to find a couple of ways that they're not in compliance with California law. So as of this morning, DoorDash on their own website put up, and this is in the news announcement culture policy. So you can go, it's in the news part. So if you go to about.doordash.com or just doordash.com and find your way to news, should be the first thing you see there. It's today's news. It's announcing new display of customer fees in California. So in compliance with a new California law, we're updating the way our fees are displayed on DoorDash Marketplace. We're proud to be the industry leader in transparency and affordability, and changes we're making to the DoorDash Marketplace experience in California will provide customers with new ways to learn about the fees that help us operate and what they will pay. While the certain fees are displayed in changing, it is important to know that fees are not increasing, and the fees are not increasing are in all bold. Again, I'm just saying this for the audio podcast listeners because most people don't run into this article. However, if you do DoorDash, you should be aware of it. What to expect. When adding items to the cart, users will now see a running tally of their subtotal before taxes, including any fees. New or less frequent users will also be given information about what fees they can expect to pay as soon as they open the homepage of the app they're talking about too. So as we implemented these changes in compliance with the state law, we will continue to listen to DoorDash users, gather feedback, and evaluate the way we displays fees to optimize the DoorDash experience for all of the users in the community. So what they're saying here is, as each item is added, okay, so let's just keep it simple, right? Let's talk about McDonald's. Let's say that somebody's ordering for themselves and two other people. So what do you want? What do you want? And what am I going to have? And as they go, what it's going to do is it's going to show the price of what you're ordering, the for through the app. So it'll show you, okay, you want this from McDonald's, that costs this much. As you press add that, it's going to add all of the fees to anything except for taxes the customer will see. So only the taxes will come in at the end. So it's actually kind of interesting because it's a different spin on like Florida and New Jersey, who are doing you must universally across the board use the same pricing that the restaurants use in their restaurants. So this is a little bit different. This is as you add each thing, you will see, okay, so something that cost me $12 at McDonald's is going to cost me $21 here before taxes. And then you add the next person. Okay, that would be $13. This one's going to be $20.50. Okay, this person's wanting a child's meal for $9. That's going to be $19. You're going to see this all add up and know the price differences. It's a pretty crazy experience. And to any California users or any California DoorDashers, please email me, steve@ridesharerodeo.com, especially any users. So if you do DoorDash, and even if you're like, no way I would use that app, like me, but by the way, I really don't condone much behavior, but I have a specific dislike for DoorDash. I think they take things way farther than the others. So in the extreme rare circumstance I do use an app, it's always Uber Eats. And it has nothing to do with me thinking they're even the better platform. I've had it with DoorDash and their nonsense, and I'm not going to participate in that. So as a customer, I would say to any customer, the price difference is so negligible in any market that unless you're using some kind of coupons or unless you're getting something crazy deal, please at least look into using Uber Eats. You know, do they do a lot of the same things as DoorDash? Absolutely. But do they treat drivers as bad? No, they don't. I mean, do they pay drivers that well? No, there needs to be a lot of room there. But, you know, in the terms of the two and the way that the Dashers versus Uber Eats drivers are treated, I would say if the volume level were the same, I would recommend everybody to be on Uber Eats platform. I understand it's not, so I understand a lot of people are on DoorDash. However, I also understand a lot of people on DoorDash can't get any work because they don't have any for you. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse. You guys know I schedule a shift a week. Well, scheduling a shift this week was not easy. In fact, like I looked yesterday and I couldn't even get all the way 7 days out. I couldn't find anything other than like midnight to 1:30 or whatever in my area. Now, there are other areas of this city that I could schedule myself in, but even those were 1 hour blocks where I'd have to drive. So I'm like commuting to do DoorDash for an hour. Very few times have I seen my hour or 2 hours scheduled be extended beyond the time that it says. If it says an hour, I'm counting on an hour. So if I'm going to dash, it kind of needs to be in my market. So we're going to run through this real quickly here. We're going to talk about it a bit. So Uber and Lyft agree to pay drivers, and this is pretty much the headline across the board, except for with a changed or tainted word here or there. But the bottom line is it's not very it's not being very upfront and realistic, because it sounds even weird. And by that, I mean, when I read you this headline, a lot of you will know, but just the way it reads sounds much different than what it really is. So this is ABC News. I decided to use that this week. So Uber and Lyft agree to pay drivers $32.50 per hour in Massachusetts settlement. $32.50 an hour, huh? So is that, to the people that don't know, is that just for being on the app, or is that for active time? That's right, people. It's for active time. And the problem is active time, when you put numbers like this on, active time goes down quite a bit. And people see things like this, $32.50 an hour, who haven't been doing these, and start thinking, well, I'm going to go over there and do that. And they don't even, until you work an app, you don't realize that there is an active time. You just see these type articles, and some of them don't even mention the fact that it is active time. Now, there are some of the articles out there that do. I'm trying to see if this one does, and I don't think it does. But up on uberlyftdrivers.com, about 3 or 4 days ago, I think it was June 29th or 28th, I put up a post that was about this topic, Uber and Lyft drivers in Massachusetts and the $32.50. And in there are 5 different articles from 5 different sources where you can go read them. And 2 of those sources do say this is for active time. And both of them read different. I don't think they use the word active time. They say when you're on a request or something on one of them. And so, like with rideshare, it's talking about if you're on your way to pick up a passenger, or if you've got them in the car. But when you're sitting waiting for a ping, that's not active time. On average in Massachusetts, active time is about 70% for rideshare drivers. So if you're looking at 70% of your time being active and 30 waiting for a ping you want, $32.50 for the active time. Well, that, I mean, sounds okay. I see a lot of, it probably sounds great. What I've said about this is, if this were a W-2, how it kind of sounds in the title, $32.50 an hour. Yeah, it sounds great, because minimum wage in Massachusetts is $15 an hour. So this has got to be really confusing to the people who live in Massachusetts and do not understand how this works, or have not worked a platform, because you look at it and say, $32.50 per hour, I make $15 an hour and have for a year and a half at my W-2. I'm going to go try this. What they don't tell you is it's active time. So you kind of got to really dig in. But a lot of times this gets people to jump before anything. So drivers for Uber and Lyft will earn a minimum standard of $32.50 per hour under a settlement on Thursday of last week by Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell. Also with a suite of other benefits. Now, this is ABC reporting, and they're not really telling you about the active time. I mean, not just here, but in general. So they do talk about the $175 million that will go to the state to resolve allegations that the company has violated Massachusetts minimum wage an hour, a substantial majority of which will be distributed to current and former drivers. I have a little more on that. If we have time, we will get to that. But what I will say is, so you have Andrea Campbell in the AG position, and you have Maura Healey is the governor of Massachusetts, and she used to be the AG. So they work in hand and glove, these two. And Maura Healey was pushing for all of this a long time ago. I mean, I talked to my boots on the ground, my drivers that do rideshare, and as well as another friend of mine who does all the apps and has since 2015. And we all kind of see the same thing. And they're there in Massachusetts, that this is going to cause customer rates to go 2.5 times as high. And that's not surging. That's just the normal, what it'll be. That will reduce the amount of rides. People see this $32.50, or people that have been on the platform who have not been earning like they used to, or think that they've been waiting for something better. They're going to stick with this for a bit. So you're going to have the oversaturation that they already have, plus more. Now you're going to have less volume because it's going to be more expensive, and you are going to have these benefits and stuff. Now, obviously, Uber and Lyft looked into this, because I was reading this and I'm thinking, man, even in California, they do 120% of minimum wage. Well, California minimum wage ranges from $16 to $19, and I believe it's 82 cents. I always have it's 82 or 84 or 88 or something. It's just under 20 in San Francisco is what it is. So let's call it $16 to $20. So even at 120% of $20, the highest amount of minimum wage paid in California, you're talking about $24 per active hour on Prop 22. Well, they're talking about $32.50. But my thing again becomes and I've had already a couple people from New York and the Boston area too tell me, listen, if you're not making $32 an hour on the active time on these apps, I mean, not again, if you're out for 10 hours and you only work 4 and you're waiting for good orders 6 hours, or if you work 6 and you're waiting for 4, or even if you're just waiting 2, however you break it all down, most drivers I know say, dude, if you're not making $32.50 actively and you live in Boston or New York City, shouldn't be doing these apps, because that $32.50 is before expenses, is before anything. So you absolutely should not be doing these apps. And somebody, Ron, who is Go Gig It on YouTube, he also lives in Massachusetts, and he was talking about how a transit bus driver is paid $30.50. So just $2 less than the active time minimum wage. So again, you're not going to ever get 100% active time. But $30.50, you can go drive a bus in Boston and you get all the perks. It's per hour. It's not active hour. Every hour is an active hour. This is an actual rate. That's a W-2. So, but here becomes the real question. When you have the super oversaturation, which they already do, when you have less customers because they'll line item this as a fee, you're going to have less people. And they obviously do their math to make sure this will work for them to even stay. But when you do all this, you have to realize that, let's say you're at 70% active time or active time average, and you work 50 hours a week. That very easily now turns into 30% active time. And overpriced rides where, again, they can fluctuate with your pay, because they're going to make sure that you're going to have to take $32.50 an hour. So if you're thinking, man, so far, and you get, oh wait, let me add in this too, because there's even more. So this is Andrea Campbell again, the Attorney General for Massachusetts. And she's saying that for years, these companies have underpaid their drivers and denied them basic benefits. Today's agreement holds Uber and Lyft accountable and provides their drivers, for the very first time in Massachusetts, guaranteed minimum wage, paid sick time, occupational accident insurance, and healthcare stipends. Kind of a big spinoff of Prop 22 with a little bit higher of a number. Democratic Governor Maura Healey, who we were just discussing, said the settlement delivers historic wages and benefits to right the wrongs of past and ensure drivers are paid fairly going forward. So there's more from Maura Healey, and you guys can go read this. And I've done pieces on Maura Healey before. But if you're wondering at this point, well, where did this come from, and why on earth would the gig companies agree to this anyway? The reason they did is because this was the big year in Massachusetts. They've been pushing for legislation on the gig economy for a long time. But I'm surprised that this even got them to do it. But this got Maura Healey and their AG, Andrea Campbell, got them both to throw out the proposal on the vote. Now, my thing is, Uber and Lyft always have workarounds with this. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to make sure that, if you want to get the active hour, you're going to have to go somewhere that normally you'd go. I would never take that because I'm not going to get anything coming back. They're going to do things, and not intentionally to screw you, but to make sure that rides are taken quicker because there will be less rides. But basically, the biggest perk these companies got was getting the ballot off of the vote this year. because in Massachusetts, this was going to be a very confusing thing, as Mike Harubi and I have discussed on a handful of occasions. But so now drivers will earn one sick day per every 30 hours work, up to a maximum of $40 or 40 hours per week or per year. Sorry. So every 30 hours that you work, and by the way, it works between them, Uber and Lyft. So if you work 15 Uber, 15 Lyft, you have qualified for 1 hour of sick time. You can get up to 40 hours. As part of the agreement, Uber and Lyft must update their driver application so drivers are able to view and claim their sick time directly through the app. This is going to be so messy, you guys. Drivers will receive a stipend to buy into the state's family and medical leave program. I got to tell you, I wasn't that up to date with Massachusetts. And again, we got to remember all these states are so different in the way they handle legislation and everything else. But when I was speaking to my boots on the ground who do gig work in Boston, I got to tell you that they reminded me, and I always forget this, that they're as close to Canada as can be in terms of not just proximity, but the way they treat healthcare. Almost everybody in the state of Massachusetts has healthcare, or at least has a means to get to. If you have a W-2, you have a means to get to healthcare, even if you're like entry level W-2 at fast food or whatever, and maybe not fast food isn't the best example, but any job, you kind of you're in on this system that's somewhat like Canada's. Like if you want the better medical care, and I'm not saying it's bad otherwise, but if you want to get a good doctor and, maybe not like PPO style, but like even just like being able to choose your own in a marketplace, like we do almost with the Obamacare, you're going to have to step outside of what you can get for free in Massachusetts. So they have some things in place for you not to be denied medical, but it's not the medical you would choose to take, if that makes any sense. That's how they put it to me, the people who live there. So I can only take their opinion because I've never lived in Massachusetts. Let's see. Was there any other parts of this that we needed to talk about? So, okay, under the deal, Uber and Lyft will also allow drivers to pool together their hours driving for the two companies to obtain access to health insurance stipend. So that's what I was saying. Like if you do, 5 hours on one, 15 on the other, that's just 20 hours towards the goal. The goal isn't per platform, and it's not one platform is better than the other. It is a goal that both platforms will need to live up to, and both will need to somehow pay their shares of. Anyone who drives more than 15 hours per week for either or both, again, the combined thing, or if you just drive for Lyft or Uber, that's fine too. You just need to do 15, and it needs to be active, clearly. Cannot just be 15 hours on the app. 15 active hours, we'll make that clear because this article does not. 15 active hours per week or more will be able to earn a health insurance stipend to pay for a plan from the Massachusetts Health Connector. To me, that's just like the open market Obamacare. And I think of it like the Prop 22 thing. You're not really getting that great of medical coverage. And because of the way Massachusetts works, as I've been told, there's already a way to go in and get medical care with any job. So let's see. I'm not sure if Maura Healey, the governor, she did solidify some of the givens that we should know about in this space. The companies are barred from discriminating against drivers based on race, religion, national origin, sex orientation, gender ID, gender identity, disability, or other protected identities. So, and can't retaliate against drivers who have filed a complaint about the companies with the Attorney General's office. I don't know what they're thinking there, because that's going to bog down the Attorney General's office unless they just are going to automate it and AI it. But I don't know how they're doing that. The deal also requires the companies to provide drivers in-app chat support with a live person in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and French. So at any time you can get a in-app support. And I don't know if that means, like, I hate saying it this way, but a more real support, because we know that a lot of times these are fed out of country. I don't know if this is something that's kind of more dialed, and it's saying, no, these must be not a tier 0.5 or a tier 1 where they don't matter type connection. I feel like this in-app support means it has to be able to help you in real time, as it should. But we know a lot of times with these apps, you end up with somebody in a different country. I've had I've had representatives on with apps before where I've gotten nowhere. I've spun my wheels. I now know how to tell. I've learned other phone numbers to use to get more direct to somebody. But I once had somebody who with Instacart, for instance, who said, when I said I'm in Colorado, and that threw them. And I won't get into the actual conversation, but it threw them because they thought Colorado was a country. So when I said I'm in Colorado, and I said I'm actually in Denver, and they said, oh, they were confused and said, oh, I thought you said you were in the country of Colorado. Isn't Denver in the United States, or whatever it was? And I was like, Denver's in Colorado, which is in the United States. So we were playing a game of geography where I was teaching them that there are states in this country. Their English wasn't good, and nothing bad against that. It's just, if these people aren't even trained to understand that, I don't get the point of what they're doing. Because if that's proof they can't help, if they don't know if they think that when I said Colorado, they somehow on their country sheet pulled up something. I mean, who knows? Like the COL on countries pulls up Colombia. So did they put in Colombia? Because I'm not in Colombia, I'm in Colorado. Because somehow they had flowed to the next screen, and that's where the issue happened, was because they were like, well, wait, I don't see this. And I'm like, what? So we kind of had to backtrack and realize, oh, this person didn't realize I'm in the United States, even though I said Colorado, and they acknowledged it. I know it's weird stuff. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I get it. Let's see if what we got on Instacart here for the day. Oh gosh, Instacart, my favorite. Although I guys, I will say, and I've said this before, I've been trying to give Instacart credit where it's due, because Instacart is they're fully transparent. They don't pay well, but they're fully transparent. And I've often said that if you're not going to kick me off a platform, but you're going to be fully transparent, can't get mad at you. However, where I can get mad at Instacart is they still have a tier system. So somebody who accepts more does see orders first. They don't do anything about the bot problem. They're fully aware of it. I think Instacart is the most attacked platform with bots, hands down. And even here in my market, as other people in my market can attest to, like me, we've been attacked by bots since pandemic. And to the point where it's not really even worth doing it. Now, I don't know many people in this market who do Instacart. And I know a lot of gig workers who multi-app. I know some who have and whatnot. And I know some around the country who do very well, but they probably fall into that, oh, you're up in here, you accept all the good ones. So like for me, and it's probably because when I have used Instacart, I'm always multi-apping. So sometimes we all know this, it's hard to get over there and turn everything off. And, I mean, you could be using Gary'sApps.com, Maximo. I was going to call it the DUI. Sorry, Gary. But the driver utility hub or helper, that's the DUH app. Maximo covers Uber, Lyft, some of the other ones. But if you want to use those, they do toggle others off. When you take one, it toggles the others off. When you finish it, it puts it back on. But for those of us who use some of the ones outside of these apps, even like an Instacart that doesn't fall into these, you're going to have to toggle it off like with your finger. So sometimes if you're multi-apping, you accept one, and then you go over, you've got other screens open. Even if you're using a utility app that's just shutting some off, some will have to be done manually. Some people don't shut it off and they don't care. I think that's where I've landed a lot. I leave my Instacart on. once I accept an order or I accept a delivery or something, or even a rideshare ride, I'm on my way to start doing my work. So my first thing of business is not, okay, turn everything off. Let's get all this together before we start going. I usually just start moving. And I've gotten into a habit of leaving them on because there is no acceptance rate. I don't care what they say. I know that they show them to you. Some apps say, don't worry about it. Doesn't mean anything. Others say it does. And there's a tier program. I say it doesn't matter. I think that we're going to start seeing some serious lawsuits where it does matter. And I have talked to some lawmakers in different states, not just mine, who have said, hey, the same thing I was talking about last week, who have literally said back to me, and these are people who don't fully understand even the gig economy, but they've said, well, when it comes down to it and the road hits the brick wall, bottom line is state independent contractor law overrides a company's TOS 100 times over. They said, we don't care what their TOS says. You can't use our platform if and then what, then they, because blah, blah, blah. They don't care. Because if you're not matching the independent contractor law, you cannot call these people an independent contractor. And therein we lie with the labor battle that's been going on forever. And none of us, at least almost nobody I know, I haven't talked to anybody in a long time who's like, I want employee status. I mean, look, employee status and a scheduling and stuff with these apps, I think we would all just move on to other things, wouldn't we? I'm an independent contractor, so for me, I'd have to fill a gap, but because I do other spaces that are not gig apps. However, I don't want to see any of them change. I understand that the pay fluctuates, and right now, people are struggling, period. I know people who have left the gig economy, went and got a W-2, and are already quitting the W-2 or got fired or laid off or whatever, because a W-2 is not as safe as it used to. And I'm not sitting here promoting the gig app based economy over a W-2. Who knows? Maybe you're in a specialty niche. Maybe things aren't that great right now, but you care about that space so much you're going to stick with it, because I feel like that's where we are. A lot of us are just it's a bad economy. And until it gets fixed, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. I mean, obviously, if you're a brain surgeon or you're this or that or the other, you're probably not fluctuating too much, and you're not inflation affected as much as many of us who go out there and hustle every day. We are inflation affected all the time. But a real quick, just over brief on this. So is it the 3 points? Let me see. Yeah, so Instacart aims to make deliveries smoother for its workers. The grocery tech company has added features, including a drop-off option for delivery orders that customers don't immediately collect. So in summary, here's what they're doing. It's nothing big in my book. I would rather hear an article about Instacart is going after the bots. Because listen, I can just to let you all know, I can go on my social on TikTok or on other platforms, not YouTube as much, and they must just have it. They've got it down a little bit better on blocking these people. But if I go on Instagram or I go on YouTube or TikTok or I go on Twitter and I put hashtag Instacart and something about a shopper, or at least for Twitter, but for Instagram and TikTok, if I just even put the word Instacart in the title, I'll have more posts in the comments about a bot grabber or a bot system that can reactivate a deactivated account. Not even so much what Facebook Marketplace does about selling bad accounts, but it can reactivate. And I get these things all the time. Like, and then once, I've started going into my settings, like in TikTok, and putting, I'll give you an example. I put in hashtag Moody Trolls, MOODYTROLLS. Moody Trolls can be found on Instagram, and they can sell you bots. They can reactivate your account. Well, I've hashtag Moody Trolls or whatever it is. And it might be a Z, not an S. I'm not sure. But regardless, I've hashtagged whatever it is because I kept seeing it come up. And now nobody can post that into my TikTok. But if somebody had a question about Moody Trolls and put it into my TikTok, they would also be blocked. But getting to so I'd rather see them go after that. bringing base pay back up because, and I'm not always about base pay, but I do think when it comes to grocery shopping, there should be a base pay that's more than, what was it? It was like 12, then it was 8, then it was 7. Now it's like you might have a double for 7, which means $3.50 each. So it's ridiculous. But instead of the big things they should be tackling, here's what we're talking about as these huge tools for drivers. So last Thursday, they are going to streamline the delivery process. And here's how. Delivery workers can now leave eligible orders at customers' doorsteps if the customers don't show up to collect their orders. Previously, workers were directed to bring the orders back to the store. I got to bring that up because, again, I don't do enough Instacarts. So, guys, please email me, or if you're in the live chat, because I'm not able to watch, because this is the audio podcast. So I'm sorry I'm not watching this, but I might do a quick live to go over any of this and discuss anything gig related as soon as this is done. So if you're on YouTube and this ends, you might want to watch, because I might have a live coming right behind it, where it's just going to be a Q&A for anybody that wants to drop by. Nobody drops by, I'll end it. But basically, to me, this is just I wasn't sure that I do know that back maybe a year ago, some people would be like, well, this got all screwed up, so I'm keeping these groceries or whatever. I'd heard those stories. I didn't know they were to a system of bringing it back now, because I don't know if you guys know this or not. A lot of you probably do, but if like you take a piece of steak out of the refrigeration section at a grocery store, and you're walking through potato chip aisle or something, and you're like, wait, I can't afford this steak, and you just put it down on a counter, which I've seen people do this kind of thing before. Do you know that they're not allowed to restock that steak? That steak has to go into the trash. So I'm not really sure with a lot of the grocery orders why they want them back. I mean, if they're boxed or bagged items, I guess, but even at that point, you've really like put it through some hands, and I know it's already been through some, but I mean, now it's been through even more. And is there a restocking? Do you send it back? How does that work? I would like to know. The other new tools include a new scanning feature for multi-order batch confirmations and letting workers know if pets are at residences. Look, pets at residences are a real deal. We know a few people that have got bit. There's a person on YouTube who always listens to 13 and some of the stuff I do over there. He was bit pretty badly in California. There was somebody else up in Seattle that was bit last week that I know. Along with others too. So, I mean, it's just one thing after another. And I don't think these are the biggest features. I don't think they're even newsworthy, to be honest. I just wanted to bring it up because I feel like we need to talk about Instacart once in a while, because I always feel like there was that actress's dog who was killed by an Instacart driver. And I feel horrible for this woman. I'm a big dog lover. But if for about a month, if you went and typed Instacart and then went to news on Google, she was the entire first, maybe even in second page of a Google search. And then if you went to the third or fourth page, there was real news going on about Instacart, but they were hiding it behind her name is Angie something. I can't remember what show she was on or whatnot, but it was just stuck in the news and it was burying the other news. So, yeah, let's see if we got time for these. Well, we're going to get through all of them, I guess. We got 2 more to go, and then see if we got time for the extra one. So, Cedar Rapids-based DoorDash competitor to launch within the next 3 months. So, guys, here's my Cedar Rapids story for you. Again, it's not long, but it's very to the point. I like it. So, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. In an effort to bring money back to local restaurants, Cedar Rapids businesses are collaborating to start an area-based food delivery app. The app is called Loco, Loco. Loco. It will serve as a locally owned DoorDash. Is how they even worded it. So it's not DoorDash. I would have just said locally owned delivery, but okay. It will serve as a locally owned DoorDash with the goal of taking a smaller commission from the restaurants and lower delivery fees. According to the reports, food delivery apps charge restaurants a 30% commission on orders. The commission rates for Loco orders will be 15% with a $5 processing fee. I would say that some of those even go above 30%, but we'll be nice and play along here. One of the local entrepreneurs behind the project says that Loco has the potential to help the Cedar Rapids economy. He previously ran Loyal to Local, which was another Cedar Rapids-based initiative, which he said raised $50,000 for local businesses. The fees are getting, this is a quote from Steve Shriver, the fees are getting higher and higher on all of these third-party apps. There are millions of dollars leaving our community. The Loco team is still reaching out to investors and restaurants to join the program. Shiver said there are 15 to 20 currently signed on, with a handful to come. Now, if you aren't familiar with Cedar Rapids, it's not a huge town. 15 to 20 is a good amount of restaurants to have landed, because that means they're coming off the other platforms. So there's going to be something to be had there. So Cedar Rapids people, any listeners in the Cedar Rapids area, which I know there are a few on the audio podcast, you guys have emailed me. It might have been a minute or two, but I know there's still some of you out there. Please give me an email once you see Loco up and running. And especially if you sign up for Loco, even if it puts you on a waiting list, please email me. I would love to have you on the podcast, pre and post it launching. But the profit pool ends up going back to the restaurants, which will ultimately just stay in the community and fuel our future economic success. For major apps, the rates for delivery services vary depending on the order. Loco drivers are set to be paid $15 an hour. I don't know what that means. If, again, I always read these as active hours. Not sure if that means if you're working on the Loco app, you might get actually paid $15 an hour plus your tips. So that is something else I want to know about this service. This is a new article. It just dropped. But it's interesting. I'm always interested in these companies that want to start up and compete, because, hey, let's face it, that's the only way things are going to change. So, excuse me there. I had to have a drink of water. Okay. So I want to talk about, do we have enough time? Yeah, we got enough time. Excuse me. Hailing a Robo taxi in the city is now as easy as Uber, baby. Take the baby out, and that is the title for the San Francisco Examiner article that dropped last week. So basically, let's just kind of roll through the bullet points of this, because I know you guys love it when I talk about autonomous. Getting a ride in an autonomous vehicle is now as simple as a tap of a finger. Now, before, we knew that Cruise and Waymo were operating. However, they were operating with, like for Waymo, you had to be a Waymo One client, meaning you had to be tied into the Waymo family in some way or another. Not everybody could download the Waymo app and just start getting rides. We asked John Dash to do that, who lives in Phoenix, a couple times, and he could not get on. Then they tried it through the Uber app, but it was gone too quickly, and it was only in a little tiny area. There's been so many problems with this autonomous space. But now, Waymo, the most prolific self-driving car company in the city, announced that San Francisco users no longer have to put in their name on a wait list to use its app. That means as soon as people download the Waymo One app, they will be able to order rides. The cost of Waymo's ride-hailing service is comparable to the prices of Uber and Lyft. In the past, new users were forced to wait to access Waymo services, which could take weeks or even months, or even not have ever got on. The only other city in the nation where Waymo doesn't have a wait list is Phoenix. So Phoenix and San Francisco, these are the only two markets we're talking about. But as we know, this has been something that's being pushed so hard. Once they get it down in a few cities, they will start moving it to more markets. But we also know San Francisco went through some crap here, not with Waymo too. So, and there's actually a Amazon has one too. Hopefully we'll get to that here. But so they work in there. The company also operates in Los Angeles and Austin. However, in both of those cities, they cannot be driverless. So that's not really the same thing. They used to do that in Vegas too, where it couldn't be driverless, but you could be in it. The decision marks another significant step for Waymo as it continues to solidify its place in the city streets. Autonomous vehicles have been among the city's most divisive issues since San Francisco emerged as a central testing ground for the technology in recent years. For those of you not familiar, the Waymo and Cruise lanes in San Francisco. So basically think of it like a bus. Okay. If you're trying to get from A to B, it doesn't take you from A to B. You get on it and you can get pretty damn close, but it has routes it has to take. So it has to go, it's not going to always be the most direct route. And you might have to walk a couple blocks here or there to meet up with it because there are places it has to stay. There's been all kinds of the mayor, the police department, the fire department, the chiefs, the speakers for the city of San Francisco have all spoke out against these and said they want them gone. They have caused nothing but problems, parking issues, all kinds of things. So last month, Waymo was placed under federal investigation by the National Highway Traffic Administration in California after nearly 24 reports of crashes and possible traffic safety violations. 8 of the 22 incidences occurred in San Francisco over a period of, it says 8 years. I'm not sure how right that is because I think there's more. I'm wondering if this is 22 of the non-driver ones because there were a bunch where there was a driver testing. But both Cruise and Amazon does have a autonomous as well. It's called Zook. It is ZOOX. Are also under federal investigation. Waymo recalled its vehicles twice in the wake of the accidents in Phoenix earlier this year and received backlash after one of its vehicles struck a bicyclists in Patero Hill. I don't know how I'm saying that wrong. In February. Meanwhile, Cruise continues to slowly rehabilitate its reputation following the October 2nd crash. By the way, guys, pause there because I want to thank Cruise very much because Cruise will be coming on the audio podcast. I have their safety engineer. As you guys know, my feelings towards autonomous are they're fact-based, but they're not. I'm sure one day it will get there. I know it's been all smoke and mirrors and lies on the date till now, though. But I was able to secure Steve Brennan. He is the new he's the new engineering lead over at Cruise. He will be on the audio podcast in, I think it's about 6 or 7 weeks right now. It's somewhere in the books. I'll have to find it for you guys. But so Cruise continues to slowly rehabilitate its reputation following the October 2nd crash. And this is the crash in San Francisco. We talked about this on the roundtable, that where it ran over the guy and drug him underneath the car for like 2 blocks. So the California Public Utilities Commission ordered the company to pay $112,500 for that instance. And if you're wondering, I think that is amazingly low. When we hear the millions of dollars that people sue other people for driving issues, why is it only that? It's only that because that's the cap. That's the maximum amount allowed under state law in California for its handling of the incident's aftermath. So these driverless cars don't have to obey the same standards as drivered cars. I could be sued for millions of dollars if I ran over a person and drugged them for 2 blocks. In California, you can only be sued for $112,500 if you do that. And only if you're a driverless car. If you're a drivered car, you could be sued for $50 million. So please make some sense of that to me too, because these cars aren't even street ready. There's all kinds of issues. I mean, whether you go to engineering magazines or whether you go to autonomous magazines or you get into the articles and dissect things like this, most of them put it around 70 to 75% efficiency. And that's the at best scenario. I mean, that's how many problems they have. The LiDAR, not good in weather. There are times they have to pull over and they can't deal with what I mean, like for a while, like if it's raining too hard or if it starts snowing, this is why we don't see them in the snow. But California and San Francisco lawmakers have pushed for more regulation and control over robotaxi firms' ability to expand. Last week, State Senator Dave Cortez pulled a bill that would limit the number of commercially operated self-driving vehicles in the state's biggest cities due to staunch opposition from the industry. He told the Examiner there, quote unquote, there wasn't a path forward. So despite the bill having already passed the California Senate, according to the company, Waymo has driven 3.8 million miles in San Francisco and nearly 300,000 people have signed up to do rides in a Waymo robotaxi in the city. I don't know how many of those have actually got there, because up until this article dropped, you were just basically like a lot of us on a lot of gig app lists. You were just on a waiting list. I am not a fan of this article. I am not a fan of what they're doing. I thought that after the Cruise incident, which was following another bunch of incidents. This is not the first in there, not the first in Phoenix either. But also the city officials want them out. So it's like the governors let them in. We all know why. It's because sadly, I'm just going to put it point blank. It's, hey, can we live test these vehicles here that work at 70 to 75% efficiency around where people are? Sure. Like, to me, that's, I've always said, go build a fake city in the desert and let all the companies run there first. Make sure the companies can even work around each other. Make sure that these vehicles can even work around other vehicles. Have fake people crossing that, are like cardboard or whatever, to see how they operate when something jumps out in front of them or this and that. I think that somehow we skipped that entire thing. And the last thing, we are getting to the encore thing that I was hoping we would, because it's not really a lot to it, but I just wanted to tag it and bag it and make fun of it because it's just a PR pitch. But it was all over the news last week. At the end of last week, Uber will pay. This is The Verge, but there's a lot of articles you can find this on. Uber will pay you $1,000 to ditch your car for 5 weeks. Sounds pretty simple, right? Ditch your car for 5 weeks and get $1,000 from Uber. What's the catch? About 175 people in select cities in the US and Canada will be given free Uber rides and credit for bike share and public transit to stop driving. Is it just a PR stunt, guys? Because yes, it is. 100%. 175 people. Come on. For real? Like, we are in the millions of rides per day, but you're going to give 175 people in the US and Canada $1,000 each. So we're talking $175,000, which to me sounds like a lot of money in my world. When I think about it in the big scope of Uber, it's nothing. This is a PR stunt. That 175 is paid for by the advertising it's getting from this article. If this was going out to just tons of people, if it was going to be in 10 cities in the US and there was going to be, 2,500 people in each city that were given this, or even 1,000 in each city, that would be different. But this is just a PR stunt, and it's kind of sad. So here's what you get. You get $500 in Uber Cash redeemable in the Uber app for car trips or Lime bikes and scooter share. You get $200 voucher redeemable for car rental or car share. And you get $300 across other transportation modes, such as public transit. So really, now let's break it down. Now that 1,000 just became 500, maybe 7, maybe 1,000. But 500 is really what you're getting in rideshare. 200 you're getting in a car rental if you want. What is that going to be in most cities? A day or two. And then 300 you get for like buses and stuff, anything that public transit that can be used through the Uber app. Well, that's ridiculous, because really now you're just talking about 500. So now take that 175,000, take it in half, and what are we at? 80, 87,750. Okay, that's nothing to Uber. This is just a PR stunt. And with that, you guys, that's a wrap on this week. Again, you're gonna see some changes coming to a few things. 13 will not change at all on the YouTube channel. And for those of you on the audio podcast world, remember I did try to bring 13 to you. You just weren't big fans of the short 13-minute episodes. So I get it. I thought about including 13 into the lead-in of each week's podcast. But then I was like, no, I can just regurgitate it and put it a little differently, which allows me to think about it a little more. But that's a wrap for this week. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for joining the live. Again, I will be doing premieres of the audio podcast on the YouTube channel, but it will premiere on the same day that it drops on all audio platforms on Tuesdays. The live like this on a Monday that will then drop on Tuesdays, that will be done on Podbean app from now on. And I will put a little info out to the YouTube people because I think some of you should come over and join. It's really easy. All you got to do is have a phone, download the Podbean app, and it's as easy as just the phone. You don't need a headset or anything. You can be in your car and you can just hit join. I can have 8 seats open and you can join in on the panel. So I want to see if I can get some of you guys to do that. It's just audio. It's no video. Runs at a very, very, very little bit needed on your phone to run the Podbean app, but it allows anybody to come in and listen. There's a chat where so you can chat and I can see it. I can invite people up if I think, oh, I know that person and he's great for this topic that I have coming. So it's just a little bit different, and I'm going to try and get some of you to try it. Thank you all for joining. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever you got, email steve@ridesharerodeo.com. And until next week, be safe, earn smart, and be good to each other. Peace, y'all.
She was just a baby.